The Rangers made a big trade for a reliever with a troubling history and a lot of talent, and they have 6 All-Stars, and they dropped 2 winnable games to the Astros this weekend. All that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On the Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan since 2010, the founder and host for all 5 seasons of this Locked On Rangers podcast. Today is Monday, July 3rd. Your Rangers are 50-34, alone atop the AL West with a 4-game lead over the Houston Astros. Thank you all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Subscribe on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Before we get into today's episode, this episode is brought to you by Ibotta. Ibotta gives you cash back on hundreds of grocery items from produce to personal care to pantry goods, so you make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by downloading the free Ibotta app and using code LOCKEDONMLB. Now, the Rangers had an incredibly busy weekend full of lots of news, including 4 All-Star starters, 2 more on the, reserves, and one reserve and 1 pitcher. And on Friday night, the Rangers made a massive trade for Aroldis Chapman, reliever of the Kansas City Royals. They traded Cole Ragans and Roni Cabrera for Aroldis Chapman. And before I get into any of the specifics of this trade, it feels wrong to just talk about it on a pure baseball perspective. Now, if you don't know the history of Aroldis Chapman, he is a guy who has a deeply questionable history. In 2016, he was suspended for 30 games due to MLB's domestic violence policy. On October 30th in 2015, he scared his girlfriend so badly that she called the police officers. More than a dozen officers came by. The couple had an argument, and according to the police report, she said that Chapman had choked her, pushed her into a wall, and then went into the garage, retrieved a handgun, and fired 8 bullets into the window and wall. She fled, calling for help, while their infant child remained inside. So this is the history with this guy. This is not a guy who I would want on my favorite baseball team. This is not a guy I feel good cheering for, and this is not a guy who I think John Daniels would have traded for. This is not a move that I think he would have made. He is pretty universally praised for having a very strong moral compass, and yeah, he did bring in other guys with questionable histories like Josh Hamilton and Matt Bush, but this is a different kind of scenario. Those guys were both dealing with substance abuse issues and addiction, which is a disease. It's not something that someone can help, and there's plenty of ways to get help and get guys on treatment programs and get guys away from those substances and, give them a second chance. And I am a firm believer that everybody deserves a second chance. And who am I to be judge, jury, and executioner of what this guy does and feels, and if he's actually learned from his behavior and grown as a person and got to be better. But the comments that I'm seeing from him and the stance that I've seen from him in general and the stance around baseball is that this guy doesn't really necessarily feel all that much regret. This is his quote to an interpreter in Tampa, according to NewJersey.com a few years back, right after talking about the incident. He said, quote, "I'm apologizing because of the use of the gun. It was bad judgment on my part, but I also want to say that I never hurt my girlfriend. I want this to be very clear," end quote. And this is just a really, really disgusting situation. Honestly, it's something that I really hate talking about and I hate thinking about. And baseball and sports in general is supposed to be an escape from the real world problems, and I'm not going to be one to legislate how someone feels about this. If you're a Rangers fan, you're allowed to enjoy good players being on your baseball team. I'm just saying that I feel a pit in my stomach when I see this guy in a Texas Rangers uniform, and I'm not going to feel any joy when he does good things for the Rangers. He did pitch his first inning, and he's a really good baseball player. He's a really good reliever, and he's exactly the type of player that the Rangers need on paper. But this is also a guy who is just not someone I feel good celebrating or rooting for. And it's not just him as this issue in general. I mean, last year with the Yankees, he basically quit on his team. He got a an infection, a post-tattoo infection. He was out for a month in the middle of a playoff chase in August and September. He wasn't having a great season last year, and so it kind of felt like he quit on the team. He wasn't guaranteed a playoff spot, so he didn't show up for a mandatory workout, and then the Yankees decided to leave him off their playoff roster. I mean, this is the kind of guy that the Rangers are bringing in, and, it's just not someone that I feel good about rooting for. Last year with the Yankees, he had a 4.46 ERA, which was the highest of his career. Just not a great season for him. The fastball was down. This is a guy whose fastball has been notoriously one of the best in baseball history. He has a couple of pitches at 105 miles an hour back in his Cincinnati days, and he's been a very good reliever, but he's just not someone that I feel good in my stomach rooting for. I mean, he's going to help this team be better at baseball. He definitely is. We saw that in his outing against the Astros, and it's just a sticky situation, a bad situation, and domestic abuse is a really, really powerful, important issue, and there's a lot of people who are very willing to just completely write off any domestic abuse allegations because there are no charges filed, and this is one of the big failings, in my opinion, of the legal system. It's very hard. The more I look into this, the more I research this, the more I learn about domestic violence because of sports, because it's been an issue at the forefront of sports. It is incredibly difficult to get convictions on things like that, on things like, sexual assault and domestic violence. Those things are very, very difficult to get convictions on because it is a lot of he said versus she said, and a lot of times the law is not set up to protect these women, these victims, and they are very hesitant for a lot of reasons to come out because of a lot of times the abuse that they face from fans of baseball teams. Are like, oh, you're trying to take down my favorite player, so I'm going to go attack you personally, and it happens a lot, and there's a lot of reasons why these victims will not cooperate with police. But this has been a long enough diatribe on this. This is not Locked On U.S. judicial system or Locked On Bryce's personal beliefs. I'm just saying that I don't feel good about rooting for this guy on my favorite baseball team, and if the Rangers win their first World Series and this guy's on the roster, it's going to taint it quite a bit for me. But the Rangers did pay a pretty decent price, not terrible, for a guy who is a really good reliever. Like I said, he's having a great year with the Kansas City Royals. They gave up Cole Ragans, who really exploded onto the scene this year, and I wish Cole Ragans nothing but the best. I think he's going to be a pretty solid starting pitcher for the Kansas City Royals. Roni Cabrera, if you don't know anything about him, don't feel bad about it because he is just a 17-year-old in the Dominican Summer League, having a pretty good year so far, a 1,073 OPS in just 17 games, playing mostly center field, has a homer, 4 triples, and 7 doubles in 73 plate appearances, hitting .310, an on base of .452, and slugging .621. Kind of a lotto ticket there. A little bit less than I thought the Rangers would pay, especially to go out and set the market. In years past, the Rangers have been, usually a team that move late in the deadline, but the Rangers needed help now. They've been struggling a little bit now, and they went out and got a guy who is a really, really good reliever. In his strikeout rate, his, basically everything on his Baseball Savant page looks really, really pretty. I mean, the 100th percentile of strikeout rate, he is in the 100th percentile of fastball velocity, 99th percentile or 90th percentile of fastball spin rate, 100th percentile of whiff rate, 100th percentile of expected slugging, 99th percentile of expected batting average. All of these are very nice things. He's walking quite a few people, 2nd percentile of walk rate, not getting a lot of chases, in the 4th percentile of chase rate, but everything else is in the bright red. So the Rangers got a really good reliever, and Chris Jung said that he did extensive research into the kind of person that this guy is and felt good about the acquisition. Sure. What else are you going to say, honestly? He's a good baseball player, helps make the baseball team better, and his job is to make the baseball team better. And that's kind of where I'm at with this. I wish good luck to Cole Ragans and Roni Cabrera. I think that the Rangers made themselves a better baseball team, but a much harder team for me to feel good about rooting for their success this year. Coming up, we're going to look at the 6 All-Stars that the Rangers have, including 4 starters and a couple of really frustrating losses to the Astros this week. But first, this word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Ibotta. Finally taking that summer vacation you've been planning but dreading buying all the necessities before you take off, it's time to stop spending your hard-earned money without getting anything in return. Enter Ibotta. Ibotta gives you cash back on hundreds of grocery items, from produce to personal care to pantry goods, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. Either link your loyalty account or upload your receipt after you shop and get your cash back. It's that easy. The average Ibotta user earns $120 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, or you could use your cash back to buy that flight you've been eyeing, that game you've been dying to go to, or that fancy dinner you've been craving. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much. With Ibotta, you get real cash back that you can cash out your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. You can earn cash back on hundreds of online brands and retailers too when you start using Ibotta, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 for just trying Ibotta using the code MLB when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and use code MLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code MLB. Shout out to the Everydayers for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. On Tuesday's show, I'll wrap up this massive series against Houston. The Rangers take on the Red Sox this week and catch every pitch with the hometown broadcast on SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search Rangers. Now, on to some happier news. The Rangers have 6 All-Stars this year, the most they have ever had in franchise history, including 4 starters. Those starters are at catcher, Jonah Heim; at second base, Marcus Semien; at shortstop, Corey Seager; at third base, Josh Jung. Adolis Garcia did not make the game as a starter, but he will be there as a reserve. And the last and 6th All-Star for your Texas Rangers is, of course, starting pitcher Nathan Eovaldi. This is a dominant team, and none of these All-Stars are unworthy by any means. Jonah Heim has been the best catcher in the American League by far, and there's not a single metric where Adley Rutschman beat him out. Adley is going to be a catcher on the roster, but he is going to be a backup to Jonah Heim. And I am so glad that Heim did not get robbed this year just because he is not on the Yankees. He was going up against his former teammate in voting last year, and well, I guess he technically was this year as well. But the voters recognized, and Jonah Heim put out, and he produced. He's got 19 doubles, 12 home runs, hitting .282, then on base of .334, slugging .484, and .818 OPS as a catcher, 2.6 baseball reference WAR. He has been absolutely exceptional this year. Marcus Semien has been by far the best second baseman in all of baseball. The numbers have kind of dropped off just a little bit after that incredible month of May, but in April as well. But he has still been fantastic. 11 home runs for him, 25 doubles leads the team, an on base of .351, an OPS of .813. He has been exceptional. Also, 8 stolen bases for him. Corey Seager has been exceptional as well, hitting over .350 with an on base of .418, slugging over .600. The vaunted .346 line, .345 for me, .300 batting average, .400 on base, .500 slugging is the mark of a truly elite hitter. He's got an OPS over 1,000 this year, 23 doubles, 10 home runs, 49 RBIs in 52 games. He's been exceptional. And Josh Jung, he has been exceptional as well. An .810 OPS, 17 home runs, 16 doubles, 50 RBIs, hitting .270 and an .810 OPS, like I just said. I mean, very deserving for all these guys. I thought that Adolis Garcia was probably worthy of being a starter, but, there are guys ahead of him with a lot more star power, a lot more, name brand recognition in, Mike Trout and Aaron Judge. And when you're in the American League and you're an outfielder, it's going to be tough to be named a starter. You got to be having a truly exceptional season. And Adolis Garcia is having an exceptional season. 83 games for him, 361 plate appearances. He's got 20 bombs to lead the Rangers, hitting .259, a slugging percentage of .503, and .830 OPS. He's on pace for 40 bombs this year, 18 doubles for him, 67 RBIs lead this team, and 6 stolen bases without being caught stealing. That is the most on this team without being caught stealing. He has been exceptional defensively, offensively. He has upped his game. He has been more of an all-around hitter. He has been a clutch hitter. He has been a power hitter. He has been exceptional. And Nathan Eovaldi this year has been everything the Rangers needed him to be. A .264 ERA in 112 and 1/3 innings pitched, 106 strikeouts, 2.2 walks per nine. 0.6 homers per nine and 6.7 hits per nine this year, an ERA plus of 163, meaning he's 63% better than the average starting pitcher. And he has been going very, very deep into games, getting the Rangers a lot of innings, including 7 this weekend, in the only win so far this weekend against the Astros. Hopefully the Rangers can pull out a split in that series. It's been really frustrating. We'll get into in the third segment, but this is a deep, deep team. And there were some other guys who were maybe worthy of all-star inclusion. Maybe Will Smith was worthy of a sniff before Josh Sborz' numbers kind of blew up after a rough outing on Sunday. I thought his numbers were definitely worthy of being an all-star. He's been fantastic and honestly one of the best relievers in all of baseball. John Gray had not the best start, and it was going to be a little bit of a squint and see situation. He had an ERA under 3 before his most recent start against the Astros that really got out of hand in that 6th inning, but I thought he was definitely worthy of a look. And Dane Dunning, his sample size isn't huge, but he's got 80 and a third innings and a 2.69 ERA. He's in the top 10 in the American League in all of it, in the American League in ERA at that 2.69 figure. So I mean, he's not all-star worthy. The Rangers have a lot of talent on this team, and all these guys are absolutely worthy. I mean, I think that Eovaldi Tavares should have gotten a little bit more of a look. I thought Ezekiel Duran is definitely a guy who should have gotten more look, but there were plenty of more guys who were absolutely robbed, in my opinion, of not being named all-stars. Wander Franco is one of the top 5 players in all of baseball, and he did not make the all-star roster, which is extremely surprising, in my opinion. The Rangers don't have the most all-star players. That belongs to the Braves. They do have the most starters at 4. The Braves only have, I believe, 3 position players that are starting: Sean Murphy, Orlando Arcia at shortstop, and Ronald Acuna Jr. in the outfield. They might have a 4th starter in one of their 2 starting pitchers in either Bryce Elder or Spencer Strider starting the All-Star game, but the Rangers also might have a starting pitcher in Nathan Eovaldi starting this All-Star game. I think it's going to be a really interesting choice of whoever the manager is deciding on who starts this game. I mean, there are plenty of really good options. Framber Valdez, who actually was hurt, and the Rangers missed him on Sunday. We'll get into that in a second. Shane McClanahan, who is also hurt. Kevin Gossman's been exceptional for the Blue Jays. Luis Castillo's been really good for the Mariners. Garrett Cole has been pretty good for the Yankees, and Sonny Gray has been truly outstanding for the Twins. He might honestly be my pick at this point to start the All-Star game if I was the manager for the American League. That is mainly if Shane McClanahan is hurt. If Shane McClanahan is healthy, then he would definitely be my pick to start the All-Star game. But Nathan Eovaldi, he's definitely got a strong case. And Garrett Cole, when he was talking about how he wanted to start the All-Star game, Nathan Eovaldi was one of the 2 guys that he named by name, of saying, that guy, if he's starting, then, if I don't like it, I got to be better. And Nathan Eovaldi's been really good this year, and I'm glad that he is getting the recognition by Garrett Cole. I don't think that they were teammates on the Yankees. I think they both missed each other in terms of when that happened. Yeah, they definitely did miss each other. But to get that respect from Garrett Cole, the ace of the New York Yankees, is pretty nice. It's pretty empowering, and it kind of shows that the league is seeing how good this Rangers team is. It is star-studded, and I do think that some of these other guys who are having great seasons and weren't named All-Stars, basically in Eovaldi Tavares and Ezekiel Duran, those are the 2 guys that I think are most worthy that weren't really considered. And I think part of that is because the league doesn't really realize how good those guys have been this year. And Ezekiel Duran, if there was a utility position, then I think that Ezekiel Duran would probably be the first guy on my ballot for sure, and maybe on a lot of people's ballots, because he's got an 886 OPS, 12 bombs, 14 doubles in 65 games played, hitting over 300 and on base just 1 point shy of 350. He has been exceptional this year, but because he's playing so many different positions and he's the number 7 or 8 hitter in a lineup that is very, very talented, he's not getting a lot of love. Same with Eovaldi Tavares, who's been exceptional defensively and offensively this year, an 825 OPS, just 1 point in the batting average below 300, 9 bombs this year while playing elite center field defense. He's hitting 9th, so a lot of teams aren't thinking of him as being all-star worthy. I know that he is, and I think he'll make multiple all-star games in his career, and I think the same could be said for Ezekiel Duran. Wasn't the case this year for them, but that doesn't diminish their abilities, and it doesn't diminish what they're doing for the Rangers this year. And honestly, having like 8 players at the All-Star game is going to be a bit much. And I think that the guys who were snubs or should have been at least considered a little bit more, in my opinion, getting Leo Taveras and Ezekiel Duran and the rest of this roster that isn't going to the All-Star game some more days off is definitely going to be helpful for them. But I'm hoping that it's not too exhausting for Corey Seager and Josh Jung and Jonah Heim and Nathan Eovaldi. Honestly, if Eovaldi just didn't pitch at all, I would be totally fine with that. Just saving his arm and not throwing in an exhibition game, as fun as the exhibition game may be. But coming up, we're going to look at the weekend series so far against these Houston Astros and why it's been so frustrating. The Rangers should have taken all 3 games of this series so far. But first, this word from our sponsors. Shout out to the Everydayers for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. On Wednesday show, I'll be talking about Glenn Otto's new role with the Rangers. The Rangers take on the Red Sox this week. This week, you can catch every pitch with the hometown broadcast on SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search Rangers. Now, this weekend series so far, it's a 4-gamer, so the Rangers will be playing their Monday game about an hour-ish after this episode comes out, so having an episode for you on Tuesday morning, breaking down that game and taking more of a look at this series as a whole. But the Rangers have lost 2 out of their first 3 against the Astros. They head into this series and against an Astros team that just was not doing well this month. They had a losing record in the month. The Rangers had a winning record by about half a game in the month of June, and it was just a frustrating couple of games to lose, both of them 5-3 losses, and both of them games where the Rangers were winning and I thought really should have won. On Friday's game, this was not a great outing from Jon Gray. He was mostly cruising in this one. He allowed a home run to Jose Altuve, the first batter of the game. The Rangers got that run back in the bottom of the first inning, scored a pair in the 4th inning, back-to-back home runs from the all-star starters Josh Jung and Jonah Heim, their 17th and 12th of the season consecutively. And Jon Gray just got into trouble in the 6th inning, allowed 3 runs in that 6th inning. He was able to get out of it, but by then the Rangers had a 2-run deficit, and they just weren't able to do much against this Astros bullpen. This Astros bullpen, it's been struggling a bit this year, and there's been a lot of talk about it. Oh, this bullpen's struggling. It's still a really incredibly deep bullpen. I mean, the amount of guys that they can just throw out there and just go out there and be exceptional. The Rangers only got 1 base runner against the Astros bullpen. That was a hit against Brian Abreu, and that was it. That was all this Rangers offense could do in the final 4 innings of this one. I mean, Blanco went 4 innings, allowed 3 runs. All of them were earned. 4 walks for him, 4 hits. And the Rangers basically in this series, they've had to get to the Astros starters or they aren't going to win the game. That's just kind of been the case because the Astros threw out 4 different guys, and they all threw nearly perfect innings. Phil Maton comes in, a perfect inning with 2 strikeouts. Hector Neris comes in, a perfect inning with 1 strikeout. Brian Abreu comes in, just allows the 1 hit, 1 strikeout. And Ryan Presley comes in with the perfect inning with 1 strikeout. Just bing, bang, boom, just day after day after day. And they did it again. I mean, basically all this series. And on Sunday's game, where they had a bullpen game, the Rangers caught a break, a big break. They didn't have to face one of, if not the best pitchers in the American League in Framber Valdez. He got scratched with a sprained ankle basically the day before the game, and the Rangers couldn't do much of anything off the Astros starter. I mean, Dubin only went 4 innings and allowed just 1 run. He had an ERA north of 10 heading into this one. North of 10. It's just not something that you should be able to get away with. A bullpen game, and now his ERA is down all the way to 7 after that masterful performance, but the Rangers couldn't get anything going off of almost any of the Astros relievers yet again. I mean, Parker Mushinski, the former Texas Tech hurler, comes out and gets a pair of strikeouts. Phil Maton comes in with another perfect inning. They got a couple more base runners. In this one, they got a couple of hits off of Brian Abreu, including a mash double by Corey Seager and a massive bomb by Nathaniel Lowe to bring the game back to 1. And the Rangers bullpen kind of blew it in this one. This was not a great outing for Josh Boers. Grant Anderson went an inning and allowed a run, just 1 run, 3 hits, kind of just blooped in there. Not necessarily the hardest hit balls, but he allowed a run. That was not great in that 6th inning. I mean, Andrew Heaney was absolutely dealing, and I don't know that I would have taken him out at the time that I did. He went 5 innings, just 3 hits, 1 walk, 8 strikeouts against this Astros offense that had been pretty solid over the weekend. Not great, not spectacular, not like the Astros offenses in years past, but still pretty solid. And Andrew Heaney was absolutely dealing in this one. And he only had 85 pitches thrown at that point. And, it's easy to second guess in hindsight because of the way things turned out. But I still think I probably would have given him one more inning, and then you wouldn't have had to throw Grant Anderson out there. You could have just gone Chapman, Sborz, and, either Will Smith or Brock Burke, whatever your heart was desiring at that point. But the Rangers had a 1-0 lead, and it didn't feel like that was in question at all. The Astros tied it up in the 6th inning, and then Josh Sborz, just not a great outing for him. Only a pair of hits, a pair of walks as well, which really got him into trouble, and a 3-run bomb. Just was not able to get out of it. Brock Burke got out of that 8th inning, but the damage was done, and then Brock Burke allowed a solo shot to, of course, who else but freaking Jose Altuve. Again, made it a 2-run game after the Rangers clawed back to make it a 1-run game with that 2-run bomb by Nathaniel Lowe in the 8th inning. And that was it. The Rangers just didn't really have a chance against Ryan Pressly. They had not the best at-bats against him. They had just gotten a pair of runs off of Brian Abreu, who is a really, really solid reliever. And then that was it. That was just a really frustrating game that the Rangers should have won. The offense should have just done more. They honestly should have done a lot more. And again, the struggles with runners in scoring position continue. 1 for 6, and the only one was the dead center field shot by Nathaniel Lowe. That was his 9th home run of the season. Lowe also had a double, his 22nd of the season. Leody Taveras and Marcus Semien also had doubles, as did Corey Seager. All those guys getting on base and getting into scoring position, and just not able to do much with it. But I do want to praise Nathan Eovaldi for the game of the weekend. A fantastic outing for him. 7 shutout innings against this Astros team. Did have 4 walks, which is pretty uncharacteristic for him, but only 2 hits for him and 5 strikeouts, lower that ERA down to 2.64. The Rangers were able to throw Josh Sborz out there for the 8th inning. So this was Josh Sborz working in back-to-back games, which is not something he has done a whole lot. He has had a lot of outings where he's gone multiple innings. And I think that one of the things that the Rangers are hoping for with Aroldis Chapman is that they won't have to throw Josh Sborz out there for multiple innings. They could be more often throw him in back-to-back days. So maybe that's not the case, just with how he looked in this second day of a back-to-back. I don't remember seeing him a whole lot in back-to-back outings, mainly because when he does throw, it has been a lot of multi-inning outings. And so we haven't really seen him do that so much this year. And there's been usually several days in between him pitching from time to time. Yeah, as I'm seeing this, the only time where he has gone back-to-back days that I've seen so far, before that, yeah, there we go. It was against Atlanta. He had the 1 perfect inning on May 16th, and then the game where he allowed a lot of 2-strike hits and blew that game open, that was May 17th. So maybe throwing Josh Sborz on back-to-back days isn't the move, and maybe having Aroldis Chapman means that you could throw him in days where you don't have Josh Sborz, instead of having to throw Grant Anderson in your 8th inning high leverage roles. And I like Grant Anderson, and I think he's a fine reliever, but not necessarily the guy who I would want to put in those high leverage scenarios. I'd rather have guys with elite strikeout stuff. That is Josh Sborz, and that is Aroldis Chapman, and I trust Will Smith in those high leverage situations as well, and I might start to trust Glenn Otto a little bit in those roles. He also came back up off of his relief or his rehab outings. Finally got to see him in a game. Nice to see him back on the roster. Also, Sam Huff was optioned back down to AAA, had a multi-home run game on Sunday. Good for him. One of those was a grand slam, and I believe the other was a 3-run bomb, at least a 2-run bomb. Good for Sam Huff, finally getting some everyday at-bats. And Brad Miller's back. Yay. It's exactly what everyone wanted. But apparently his vibes are so good they necessitate a roster spot on the 26-man roster, despite there being other guys who I think could be a little or a lot more valuable in that role. But speaking of guys whose bats are not necessarily the best, we're seeing back-to-back DH days from Josh Smith, which is very perplexing. I do like getting his bat in there, and I think he is a valuable piece on this roster, but having him DH in back-to-back days and not give Corey Seager a half day and let Corey Seager DH kind of feels like a mistake to me, especially since the Rangers, they're playing this back-to-back day games, actually back-to-back day games, because Saturday was a day game, Sunday was a day game, Monday is a day game, and Tuesday will be as well, as they travel to Boston for a 4th of July game that starts, I believe, at noon Central Time. Maybe it's even noon Eastern Time, but it's going to be an early game, and I'm just kind of confused at the nature of that and why we aren't seeing a little bit more of Mitch Garver. I know his offensive numbers aren't super imposing this year, but he is a former Silver Slugger, a guy who had a 30 bomb season in a season where he played in, I believe, in 90 something games, and we've seen when he goes on a tear, he goes on an absolute tear. And I just feel like having him catch once a week and DH maybe once every 3 days just doesn't feel like the best use of Mitch Garver's bat. I know the season hasn't been, elite, but you got to give him more reps so he can get a little bit more comfortable and play a little bit more consistently, because that bat, if it is going hot come playoff time or come right now in these games where the Rangers need to win, that is a hugely valuable asset for the Rangers. But that's going to do it for today's show. Tomorrow's show, like I said, I'll be talking about this series a little bit more in depth, and maybe about a series split and a look ahead at the All-Star break. That's going to do it for today's show. Thank you all so much for listening and subscribing, and until next time, don't forget to enjoy First Place Texas Rangers baseball.